Good day, fellow survivor, and welcome back to a new episode of Hammer D20, the show that shakes the world with its intensive strategic combats and wars fought on video games like Age of Empires. My name is Steven Sobot, and I will be your guide. Today we're going to focus on the world of tabletop miniatures and miniature war games. An artist and purveyor of the games who is an expert at painting and playing these games, as well as the places where you can go and buy some of these. But obviously, before I get to any of that, I'll have to talk to you about exactly what this is. As you can see, I'm showing you this framing that looks just like a sheet of plastic, but if you look closely enough, you'll see that the plastic contains a character in it. And this is basically just a base model, actually a sample I got from one of the stores I visited, of a miniature played in one of these games. Now, what am I talking about? Tabletop miniatures and miniature wargaming are wide and vast blanket terms for basically any game that utilizes small-scale models as their game pieces. Many of these games are played on a table and use physical measurements to consider movement, sight, and other elements of reality. It's intended to be a visual simulation of war, combat, and anything between, and is usually played as a turn-based strategy game. Probably the most popular and famous miniature war game is Warhammer 40k, and is usually the poster child for tabletop miniature games. However, there are tons of different games, from World War II sims, to medieval warfare, to Star Wars, to Game of Thrones, to The Walking Dead, to Marvel superheroes, there are tons of these games. Just imagine any kind of pop culture or nerd culture. There's probably a tabletop miniature game that coincides with it. Returning viewers will know that Dungeons & Dragons is a fantasy-based tabletop role-playing game where you usually have to imagine the scenarios and events that occur. However, combat and battles in D&D are usually visualized using a tabletop miniature system and grids that apply to that. So in some elements, D&D is technically a tabletop miniature game. Since they are so vast and different in style, many of these games have different rule sets, but the majority of them give each game piece its own health points, attack range, damage value, and are typically turn-based strategy games. Now, I know the burning question on everyone's mind is, where can you find some of these miniature war games and figurines? Well, there actually are a few places in Hamilton where you can go to. Board Game Central on Jackson Square, Black Knight Games on the corner of Upper Ottawa and Mohawk Road East, and Tistaminis, located in the Nebo Road Commercial Park at 100 Lansing Drive. So I travel up to Tistaminis to talk to its owner, David Batista, about miniature war games, what he likes about them, why he started the business, and much more. Steven, over to you.
David Batista. I'm the owner here at Tistaminis. So we're like a hobby shop, basically. We specialize mostly in Warhammer, but that's how we started out, and since then we've branched out into a lot of things. So we carry a lot of hobby supplies and paints and products. We like to carry a bunch of it, and then recently we've been getting into like trading cards as well. So we carry a lot of the main miniature games. Like behind me, for example, there's Bolt Action, which is like World War II games. Basically with miniatures, they've like made whatever you can think of, like whatever segment a company's made a game for it. So Warhammer is the big one. Most people are familiar with. There's Warhammer 40k, which is the future, and then Warhammer Age of Sigmar, which is like fantasy based. There's other games like there's a Star Wars Legion version, which is made by Fantasy Flight. Marvel Crisis Protocol, which is obviously like Marvel figures. Then they have like historicals, which is, like I said, Bolt Action, World War II. They have pretty much anything from every era. So like Hail Caesar, which is Romans. They have things from the 17th century, Black Powder. So a bunch of different things. Basically, covers all the segments for miniatures. Originally, we started off like in the basement of our house, just buying and selling used miniatures. So we ended up having to move here because of space issues. So originally, it was just purely an online business. I mean, we had some like local meetups in person, but most of our business was online. So we came here for the space. We got cheap rent, a big warehouse, and then we had this area here. So we were like, well, you know what, might as well set it up for retail if someone wants to come pick up their order or whatever. So that was 3 years ago. Since then, it's expanded, and the retail side of our business has grown. But originally, it was mainly just online.
Do you have like in-person events that you host?
Yeah, so obviously with COVID, that's been a little bit up and down. But we do have tables that are available for walk-in gaming. We do run events, mainly right now Star Wars Legion on Thursday nights. Okay. And we're also looking into doing some other games, but the tables are there for public use, and we're always having events of people coming in and playing.
Do you find that like there's like some people who just paint, some people who just play?
Yeah, definitely. So that's the funny thing with this hobby. It's like there's different sides to it. So the first side is obviously the hobby side, where you can buy the models, build and paint them. So a lot of people do that and only that, and they don't end up playing. And then there's also the other side of it, where people are buying the models, but more so they want to just play the games. So everyone falls in the spectrum somewhere. Some people do the whole thing start to finish. Some people only like the painting side. Some people only like the gaming side, or somewhere in between. It does take a long time to build and paint and do a nice job. So I think a lot of people underestimate that. Yeah. And what ends up happening is they buy too much and have a big backlog, but they have all the intentions of building and painting it all and playing it all. So it's kind of like selling yourself on a dream. But it's a very good dream to have also. My passion originally started with Warhammer since I was a kid. I remember the first time when I was really young, like 10 years old, I used to play with the plastic green soldiers. I used my imagination and all this and that. Didn't know a thing about Warhammer, but we walked through the mall one day with my parents, and I saw this beautiful display, beautifully painted miniatures, and it was just blew me away the second I saw it. So from there, it kind of, I've been a passion of mine for a while. And we actually just got into this business by accident because I went one day and just bought the used lot of Warhammer models for myself. Oh. And I was like, oh, you know what? I don't need all this. I had it was like duplicates of the models and everything. I was, I'll sell some of them back. And when I did that, I actually like made the additional investment back. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Let's try that again. Yeah. Let's try again. And it just kind of snowballed from there. It was just like, kind of a dream come true, to be honest. Couldn't afford any of this as a kid, and then now it's like you have everything, and it's kind of like funny thing how things work out sometimes.
So as a beginner, what would be something that you would recommend almost like as a starting thing?
So with Warhammer in general, it's pretty expensive, to be honest. Yeah. It depends also if you're looking to play or just hobby. Okay. If you're looking to play and you need a whole army, it will cost quite a bit, to be honest. But they do have, every army has a codex, which is like a rules book. Okay. And that gives you like the points values and tells you like how to build your army. So we always recommend that as a starting point, kind of like buy the book, plan ahead, as opposed to going out and buying everything and maybe things you don't need. So that's always a good starting point. And then also pretty much all the armies also have like a start collecting box or a combat patrol, depending on if it's Age of Sigmar or Warhammer 40k. But those usually they have savings built into the box, so when you buy it, you're kind of saving like 20% as opposed to buying those components individually.
What is the appeal of miniature war games to yourself?
Like for me personally?
Yeah.
Well, I kind of liked, like I use my imagination a lot with like I said, the plastic soldiers. Huh. So when I went, with this, it was like almost like that times 100. Like, now they're all beautifully painted, and then there's also like backstory with the lore. There's honestly so much like history that they have in the lore that you can just read about and like use your imagination, which is really the cool thing. They'll have a single hero character which just looks like a model, but then you start looking into the lore, and this character has a huge backstory, and then it makes it that much more special for that small 2-3 inch guy. You're like, oh, okay, this guy's he's not just a model, he's so and so of the whatever, and like he's a legend in himself. So that's kind of like the imagination side kind of really like helps things take off. But also like there's the modeling side where, you can do a lot, painting it yourself, seeing things turn from gray plastic and then bringing them to life by the end of it. It's almost like, and I also compare it to like reading a book. It's very like calming and soothing compared to like, everything in this day and age is electronic. This is very much like a step back from that and kind of unique in its own way. It takes hours to, if you want to do a nice job on a single model, sometimes it could take 4 to 6 hours.
Huh.
So it's not like, you could do it faster, but and a lot of people take their time. And it costs money, so they also take passion in their projects, right?
Yeah.
So, and especially when by the end, like you said, when it's all done, there's something really to be proud of. And it's like I created this kind of thing, and so it's my baby here.
I guess somebody who has almost no idea about miniatures, what would you, I guess,
like someone who doesn't know about the hobby, like what if they walked into the store, what we'd kind of like show them about. Yeah, so really it all depends on the person and what they really like are into. So there's no wrong answer. Like I said, Warhammer is the most popular one, but someone might come in and really like Marvel or Star Wars. So we get a lot of guys who are into like historicals. They love World War II miniatures, things like that. So we can always show them based on what their interests are. Like, hey, well, you like this? Well, check out these models. Check out these. And at the end of the day, the process is still the same with the hobby side. It's just you're painting something different. And then, so they're painting something that they like. And then on top of that, they're going to, they always have the option as well. It's like, well, you can do the hobby side, but also when you're done painting it, you can go ahead and play a game with it. And then that kind of opens up a whole new door. There's a lot of plastic model kits where it's like you just build it and put it on display, and that's kind of the end of the line. Whereas this has a two-pronged like two chapters to it. There's pretty much something for everyone. So depending what they're interested in, we can find them something that they'll like in most cases. So you can find us at Tistaminis.com, and we do online shipping, local pickup, local delivery. So kind of depending what you need, we can have you covered basically.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Dave, for your time. Before we move on to our next segment, we're going to take a short break. See you soon. Welcome back. Now, while many people play these miniature games as the actual combat and war simulator, there's a whole other side of the miniature war games culture which focuses on the artistry and the painting of them. So you can see this model here that I got is in this grayscale, just this base gray plastic color. And while you can use it to play with, certainly there's something that's more appealing to getting this thing into the colors that it's supposed to be. While I'm not as knowledgeable in these games as some of the others that I cover, I know that some of the miniature players only get miniature sets to paint them and keep them as decorations. They're usually really cool looking figures, and the fun of them is the challenge of applying minute details and creating vast armies of art to have on your office desk or bookshelf. So if you're going to want to have your figures colored, you're going to have to paint them yourself. Or get a professional to do it for you. So I spoke to Dan Murray, a local artist, painter, musician, poet, and overall Renaissance man, who offers customers a chance to paint your figurines on commission. In addition, Dan's also a musician and a poet, having won awards in slam poetry in 2012. Nonetheless, I spoke to him about his artistic ventures, what he offers to customers, what he likes about painting in general, and what other ventures he's applied himself to. Stephen, over to you. Thank you, Stephen. So Dan, what kind of miniatures do you paint and or play with?
So in terms of what I paint, I'll paint anything. I can get pretty bored doing the same thing again and again. So like usually I shift away from doing like big armies, and I just like try to find cool models. So anything from like Games Workshop's range is obviously awesome, but then there's like mini games like Infinity or Conquest or the Song of Ice and Fire minis game. There's lots of cool models, and I've been getting into like finding like painterly models, so like busts and like larger scale stuff. But anything that like provides me with a good challenge and isn't painting like 600 Space Marines in a row is pretty good. As for playing, I have always been more into the painting side of the hobby than the game. And with COVID going on, there hasn't been a lot of playing. Like I was playing a bit of 40K, I was playing a bit of Conquest and Infinity, but thankfully painting, I don't need to worry about people sneezing on me. So
No, exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
it's something that you can do. It's kind of something that I found that people got into painting who've never been to painting got into it during COVID. Never mind someone who probably like yourself who probably has experience prior to it being like, oh, now it's like now I have the time.
Yeah,
now I can do it.
Yeah.
So when did you start kind of getting into miniatures?
So there were two periods. One when I was like maybe 12 or 13, and I saw a friend that I saw maybe once a year, and he had gotten into like the old Warhammer fantasy, and like I was a kid who was like I was playing like Warcraft and Warcraft 2 and stuff like that when I was a kid. So anything with orcs just fascinated me. And so seeing these little models and the idea that you could like build them and paint them and then play a game with them just blew my mind. So my nana got me an old like Warhammer starter kit. Like way back then for Christmas one year, and that started me. And then there was some point like at the end of high school where I just quit for a long time. And then kind of got back into it maybe in 2018. 2019, and that's when I really started like developing a sort of passion for it. Like when I was a kid, it was slapping paint on them as fast as I could, and like playing on the carpet. But now it's like I've sort of developed a taste for the continually pushing the artistry of it.
And I'm assuming you still probably have your Nana's old beginner set still around.
Yeah. I've still got the because it was the old Bretonnians and Lizardmen box set. I've still got those old Bretonnians. All of their lances are broken. The paint jobs are abysmal. And I kind of keep them around for kicks at this point.
Usually now, obviously through COVID, you're probably doing it in your own house, kind of in your own private stead. But have you done it in like an organized setting, like with other people?
Not obviously not in COVID, but before COVID, I was living in Burlington, and there's a hobby shop in Burlington called Torchlight Games and Hobbies. And pre-COVID, there was like a great setup of painting tables in the front room. So there was this really cool like sense of community there where everybody was kind of hanging out and painting their stuff, and COVID obviously made that really difficult, and I hope to see some more of that in the future with some of the places here in Hamilton and back with Torchlight. Like I think it's an awesome way to get into the hobby and to also find people who might know things you don't. There's always somebody better. And like if you're in a community that you can learn from, it's like where just everybody's elevating each other at that point. So commissions, I, for the most part, try to let people know like what I'm most interested in doing is like either individual heroes for like a person's army. So like I like doing centerpiece models. So like a hero leader for a squad or for an army, or like monsters. Like I like doing the big stuff. But like again, anything that doesn't make me do 600 Space Marines. I will occasionally take an army commission. It got easier when I got my hands on an airbrush, because it makes base painting and stuff like that a lot less tedious. But for the most part, I love the models that I can put a lot of like kind of flair and character into. So that's usually what I try to focus on. And I mean, like it can be miniatures for war games or for Dungeons and Dragons. Like I'd say like most of the commissions I get are for people's D&D characters, and because you can get like the little like WizKids minis now like at a really good price. And if you don't have the stuff to paint them, it's not hard to get someone to do it, and it would in the end cost you less than like going out and buying like a starter set of paints and brushes and everything.
Same consideration. I've considered like getting into miniatures, but every time it's like it's for that, ignoring the cost of the miniatures, then it's like, okay, well the color, like I need the amount of colors I need. I'm like, I'm just not gonna do it justice just kind of getting into it. I need to really dive deep into it to kind of get into it.
And that's, I mean, like that's something I try to warn people about, is even the idea of doing it justice. Is there's no such thing as justice in art. Like
Yeah.
it's you do your best. And like the honest truth is you need 3 colors. You need yellow, red, and blue. Everything, and maybe black and white, but everything is an extension of those 3 colors.
Oh, true. Yeah. Okay.
So it's like theoretically you can do it with only those. And there's some dudes on YouTube who like make a point of like, I'm going to use these 3 colors and still make something unbelievable.
Right. So for similarly, what's, I guess, would you say is the going rate for commission?
Depending on a few things. One is like the size of the model, and the other is the level of quality that a person wants. So like models can range anywhere from like a single trooper to enormous things. So I like to give people as a baseline, like a single regular trooper model at the first level of quality is $10.
Okay.
And I use that as a baseline. Like if I'm doing a squad, I'll usually like do a group raid or something like that. But that's usually my starting point. And I will offer typically 3 levels of quality. So like a D&D hero, for instance, I usually do level 1 is $20, level 2 is 35, level 3 is 50. And that's like level 1 is like, it's good for the tabletop. It's often referred to as tabletop basic. So it's usually got a base coat, a wash, and maybe another layer over top of it. Level 3 is if I were painting this for myself.
I see.
So like I'm going to do weird experimental stuff, and I'm gonna like do this to the best of my current ability.
And if one were to request one from you, how do you get in contact with you about that?
So there are a couple ways. I have a my like miniatures brand is called Vox Vulpus.
Okay.
And there is a page for that on Facebook. I have an Instagram as well. Mostly just Vox Vulpus will find it. And then I can also just be emailed at voxvulpus@gmail.com.
You were talking about D&D characters. You also mentioned that you yourself are DM for hire. So for those who do not know what that is, can you explain that?
So most people at this point have heard of Dungeons and Dragons. Like some people won't know D&D yet, just as the short form of it. But Dungeons and Dragons it's such a presence, and especially like in the last couple of years with Critical Role and the kind of growth of that, it's become this incredible thing that now everybody does. It's team building exercises for corporate retreats at this point. Like. And D&D is typically a group of people who are playing characters, going on an adventure and creating a story with the guidance of a dungeon master or DM, sometimes also referred to as a game master or storyteller. One of the issues, though, that a lot of D&D groups face is nobody wants to be the dungeon master, because if you're the dungeon master, you can't be a hero slaying dragons. That's where you get people like me who very much prefer being the dungeon master. And it is a lot of work. There's been a lot of dialogue back and forth about like, is it okay to charge for being a dungeon master? Like, is that reasonable? And honestly, like the amount of work, writing, preparation, and then like effectively, if a session is 3 hours, that's a 3-hour performance. That is like riddled with improv and having to like control a group of like goofy nerds. But a cool way, I think, if people are looking to try the game for the first time or learn the game, I think that's one of my favorite things to do is do a game for brand new players. I love teaching it and demonstrating what it can be. But then also if people just want like there are a few ways you can do it. You can do it as one shots where it's a single contained adventure in one session, which is one of my favorite methods of doing it, because then it's just people paying for a night of entertainment, right? Like you can go to a movie, you can go to an escape room, or you can pay to have like a really good DM run you an awesome game. And then beyond that, you can get like longer adventures and campaigns. Like I like to do everything I can to be as theatrical as possible. So I'm like, if we can get a good like creepy room, great. I have a little Bluetooth speaker that I will run like atmosphere music over and everything like that. And I try to go the full like I don't want to do the like compare everyone to Matt Mercer thing, but I try to do the full, like I do a lot of voices. I really get into characters, and I try to do everything I can to immerse players as intensely as possible into the situation. I want people leaving feeling like incredible, or devastated, like whatever the feeling is that people are going for.
Thanks so much for your time, Dan. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. And I'm just going to throw it back to you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for your time, Dan. I appreciate you coming on to the show. It's all the time we have for Hammer D20. If you yourself are interested in coming onto the show or want me to cover something, you can contact me through Cable 14's Be On TV service. All you gotta do is go to Cable 14's front page, click Get Involved, then Guest Appearance, and then let us know. Fill out the form, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'd love to hear what's happening in your life, or what events are occurring, or you just want to discuss nerd topics. I'm all ears. Otherwise, you can send me an email at sveens@hotmail.ca if you would like to contact me directly, or check my Facebook page. That's all for now, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Hope to see and hear from you sooner than later. Have a good night.